Hi everyone, it's my honor and privilege to be with you today. In our previous 5-minute reflection, we briefly looked at the topic of mountains. We determined that since mountains are mentioned so frequently in Scripture, they clearly are pointing to deeper concepts and truths. Mountains in biblical symbolism represent a governmental system or authority. We see Yeshua accessing a higher realm continually, and this is highlighted when the Bible points out that he went into a mountain to pray. Now, this statement, going into a mountain, wasn't just a slip of the tongue mentioned once or twice. I'll give you a few scripture references to go and check out for yourself. Go and look at Matthew 4 verse 8, Matthew 14:23, Mark 6:46, Luke 9:28, and there are so many more. I could keep on going. But this word into the mountain is used repeatedly. So we have to acknowledge that there's a deeper mystery connected to this action. It doesn't simply mean that he walked up the side of a mountain after he met with everyone and he sat at the top of the mountain to pray. No, he actually ascended into a different governmental dimension. Now let us look at two types of mountain referenced in the scripture. Yes, they are referring to geological structures, but we're also going to look at the deeper concepts. So the first one is Mount Sinai. You'll find both mountains listed in Hebrews 12, but I'm going to cover Mount Sinai today. Hebrews 12 verse 18 says, "For you have not come to the mountain that may be touched, that burned with fire, and to blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that the word should not be spoken to them anymore." Verse 20, "For they could not endure what was commanded, and if so much as a beast touched the mountain, it would be stoned or shot with an arrow." Verse 21 says, "And so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I am exceedingly afraid and trembling." So again, we have not come to this mountain. Now you can read the whole account in Exodus 19 and 20. This is the mountain that the Israelites came to after leaving Egypt. While they camped at this physical mountain, God told them that he was going to meet with them. They had to prepare for that encounter for 3 days before the scheduled appointment. The physical mountain, Mount Sinai, it physically hosted the presence of God. It burned with fire, with smoke, and with blackness. Obviously it would, because the presence of God, nothing can sustain it. The sound of his voice was deafening, and the ordeal was frightening. Frightening, you know why? Because in Jewish understanding, that whole mountain lifted above the people and covered them like a hoopah in a Jewish marriage ceremony. And yes, that particular understanding from the Hebraic perspective is confirmed in Scripture. I'll read it to you. Deuteronomy 4 verse 11. It says, "And ye came near and stood under the mountain." Also, Hebraic understanding is that God started the process of giving them the vows. He desired to meet with each person. And then we see that he gives commands in Exodus 20. But the ecstasy, again, this comes from Hebraic understanding, the ecstasy and fear of the Lord that they experienced was too overwhelming for them. And Hebraic understanding says that they physically died after 5 commandments that God released to them. And then they came back to life. The ecstasy of the power that they were experiencing killed their mortal bodies, and God raised them from the dead again. This is why they said to Moses, no, you speak to God and you come back and tell us what he says, and we'll just be obedient to do it. And then we know Moses goes by himself up Mount Sinai and he receives those commands on stone tablets. But there's a deeper mystery connected to this physical mountain of Mount Sinai. It represents different ages or different eras in the church throughout the centuries. We start off with the Aaronic age, and this is where it all started. God desired to have that relationship with them, but they couldn't handle it. So they put a mediator between them and God, and they said to Moses, you go up the mountain. We then see in that era Moses instituting the Levitical priesthood. And then it was the priests and the high priests that were the mediator between God and man. We see that in the church age as well. Now, these are just terms that have given, they're not in the Bible, okay, but they're looking at what happened in these times, and so we're just giving them that title accordingly. But we have the church age, and again, we have the same system that carried on from Moses' time, where we have one pastor who stands up the front, and it's him that hears from God, and it's him that gives you the message. It's him that prays. You have any problem whatsoever, you get hold of the pastor. So again, we have that mediator between God and man. We have the kingdom age. The kingdom age is more or less about all the gifts of the Spirit that are evident, moving in signs and wonders and miracles, in prophecy and all of those different gifts. But again, people are lazy and they say, you ask God to give me a word and I will obey it. Pretty much what they said to Moses. It's still that mediator between God and man. That's what this Mount Sinai represents. But God says in Hebrews 12, you have not come to this mountain that can be touched. That was part of an old dispensation. There is something more that he has for us. Tune in next week and we'll look at the next mountain that we have come to. Thank you for tuning into this Eternal Echoes segment on our YouTube channel. I'm Samantha Mahoney. If you enjoy what you watched, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, stay inspired and keep shining your light. Shalom.